Tonight, we're going to drift back in time. To the long, cold winters of medieval Europe. Close your eyes. Get comfortable. And let the dull, fascinating details of history lull you to sleep. Let's begin, in the medieval world. Winters were long, cold, and, for many, very difficult. There were no electric heaters, no gas stoves, no modern insulation. If you were lucky, you lived in a stone or timber house, with a small hearth, and maybe some straw on the floor to keep out the chill. But for most people, warmth was a luxury. The average medieval peasant lived in a simple, one-room hut, with a thatched roof, and maybe a tiny fire in the middle of the floor. There was no chimney, just a hole in the roof, where smoke from the fire could escape slowly, while also letting rain, snow, and cold air in. The smoke itself filled the home, and irritated the eyes, but it helped preserve meats, and sometimes drove out pests. It was uncomfortable, but it was better than freezing. Food was another challenge. Crops were planted in spring and harvested in autumn. So what you had in October needed to last until April. This meant long winters of salted meats, dried beans, and stale bread. If the harvest was poor, there simply wasn't enough to go around. Many people, especially the poor, suffered from hunger and malnutrition. Some winters were known as the hungry time. Fresh vegetables, not in winter. Fruit, only if you had dried some apples or plums. Milk, only if your animals survived the cold. There were no greenhouses, no imports, no supermarkets, just whatever the earth had given. And what you managed to store. Clothing was simple: woolen tunics, cloaks, sometimes lined with fur, if you could afford it, but underclothes were made of linen, and had to be washed by hand, in icy water. Laundry was a miserable chore in winter, so most people simply didn't bother often. They wore the same clothes for weeks, sometimes months. Water froze. Wells were hard to access. Rivers became dangerous, and bathing, rare and unpleasant. Some medieval people believed cold water could make you sick, so in winter, they avoided it altogether. Bathing was more common in warm months. In winter, people simply stayed layered, and hoped the smell wouldn't linger too badly. Illnesses also spread easily in cold months, without sanitation, and with crowded, smoky houses. Diseases like influenza, pneumonia, and even the plague took their toll. If you became sick in winter, there were few remedies, and few doctors, and yet, somehow, people endured. In wealthier households, things were a bit better. Castles had fireplaces, tapestries were hung on stone walls to keep the heat in, wool carpets, heavy curtains, and feather bedding made noble winters more bearable. They might dine on game meats, warm pies, and mulled wine, but even castles were drafty and cold. And if your job was guarding the battlements, you stood outside in snow and wind, hour after hour. Night came early, and candles were expensive. Most people went to bed shortly after sundown. They gathered close, families sharing beds, huddled under wool and fur. Some even brought their animals inside for warmth: goats, chickens, or pigs, cozy in its own strange way. But not all was hardship. In some villages, winter was a time of storytelling, of singing songs by the fire, of resting after the harvest. People gathered in halls, shared bread, drank ale, and told tales of knights, saints, and spirits that roamed the snowy woods. In the darkest time of year, they found light in each other. And so, as you drift off now, imagine the quiet hush of a snowy medieval night, a soft fire crackling, Low voices sharing stories. Straw rustling beneath woolen blankets, the stars above. Distant and cold. As families and strangers alike. Survived another winter's night, not with comfort, but with resilience. Sleep well, and may your dreams be warmer than theirs. Would you like this script adapted into a full audio-ready voiceover with ambient sound cues or background visuals next?